More than 4 decades since his death, and Bob Marley remains the most emblematic, enduring icon. Born in the 60s on a small Caribbean island of Jamaica, Bob Marley is remembered not only for his great ability as a songwriter and musician, not only for what it had, but also for its personality and peace messages that he left recorded in all the songs and repertoires.
Everything's gonna be alright.
However, even though many think he led a peaceful life, Bob Marley actually had serious problems and conflicts with people close to him. Even after achieving fame and success, some of these experiences remain unknown to many. So I think let's find out who Bob Marley was, what painful events marked his life. Where did this immense composer and messenger of peace come from, and under what conditions did he live? Bob Marley is one of the most famous reggae artists in history, with over 75 million records sold. Moreover, it served as a great symbol for the Rastafari religious movement and for its country of origin, Jamaica. In 2021, when he was marking 40 years since his death, Rolling Stone magazine picked out 5 curiosities about the reggae legend, and we'll share some of them to reflect on the journey of this great artist. Bob Marley was the son of Norval Sinclair Marley, an older white man captain of the British Army, and Cedella Booker. Their wedding was set for July 1944. But Nawal left Cedella pregnant and returned to England. This story is of Robert Nesta Marley, or for those close to him, just Bob Marley, and begins on February 6, 1945, in the small inland town called St. Anne, where he was born. His father, Bob, never had direct contact with his biological father, and some say he sent a sum of money for your mother after a few years for family support. Other sources say that Marley saw his father a few times after he was born. I was passing through Kingston. I command the British Empire. To Boston. He was just 16 years old, and he around 60. Later, Marley's mother married Todd Livingstone, although he became very close friends with his son Barney. That was the beginning of the artist. He and his half-ignorant, they made guitars out of cans and tried to play music from the United States. Living in a countryside town, as a child, he was responsible for rural chores, such as milking the herd, tending the garden. Andy, in moments of leisure, learn a bit about music with older relatives. There are reports that he was also influenced by his maternal family in music. Another curiosity that marked his childhood, and it was in his tone of voice, skin. Because he was of English descent, he was called Red Boy by the residents in the province of Santos. Bob Marley's childhood and youth isn't much different from the hustle of many black youths scattered around the outskirts of our Brazil, with few opportunities and with complicated living conditions. At 5 years old, he moved with his family to Trenchtown, a community made up of slums located in the suburbs of the capital, Kingston, in Jamaica. Bob had 2 stints in this suburb, at 5 and at 5:30, when the family stayed in the capital, considering his mother and stepfather's search for financial stability, where he later delved deeper into music and transformed.
Graduated in the star of reggae music.
The curiosities that stand
The
out.
first passage through Trent Townsend, the last meeting with his biological father, and leaving school. Going back, it should be Santiago
Donation for 100 years.
the city where you were born.
Late 50s.
Coming back to Trenchtown, almost a teenager, Bob Marley began his own path.
Dear Camille.
Even though it was a very poor place, the community was culturally rich, serving as inspiration for many songs the musician wrote during his time there. At the start of the 60s, the ska rhythm was made up of local interpretation, American soul, and R&B, evaporated Saditis Kandazone, and became popular as the main Jamaican beat, taking over the island's music industry. The rhythm emerged with a strong influence on young Jamaicans, a dash of hope, 5 for those living without expectations in the outskirts of Quindip. After leaving his homeland in search of a better life and moving to Trenchtown, Harley made music the meaning of his life. Guided by his stepfather's son, Bunny Wailer, Bob begins to take music lessons while still attending normal school. Until music started to bloom in his day-to-day, to the point where he quit regular classes and dedicated himself entirely to music. Bob Marley's turn to music happened when he met Desmond Decker, a soldier who worked alongside him and had recorded a song. According to sources, Marley worked as a welder forced by his mother, who feared he might become a rude boy, a kind of delinquent in a trench coat. Shortly after, at 16, Bob records his first song named Jude. Note, this happened in the year 1962. The recording served as bargaining power to gather the names that would later form the Wailers: Peter Tosh, Bunny Wailer, his half-brother, and Bob Marley himself. Contrary to what one might imagine, technically Bob wasn't an outstanding musician. But gradually, it kept improving. However, an undeniable fact is that Bob has always been surrounded by excellent women. Musicians, from the time of the Wailers to his solo career, and what's amazing is that nearly 50 years after his death, the composer and singer still stands out among the most profitable stars on the planet. His position in the chart of commercially active deceased is explained by a fame by Daddy the genuinely global and by the attraction of its merchandise. Any product that carries his name and image is banned. And this includes everything from clothing, apparel, to a plant channel brand. Everything about Bob Marley is excessive, including his biography. There are about 500 books about him. Star. An interesting fact is that much of this music legend is based on fables and even misunderstandings. But it doesn't make sense in the case of Jamaica. When there's too many, where according to local saying, they will find not facts but versions. The newspaper El País even makes a reference to the many inventions of vocal record labels. Versions of Mahler's hit songs were multiplying.
It's too mean.
Bye-bye
With the same recording.
to collect more foreign exchange. The newspaper highlights that usually what is told to us about Bob Marley, Little One, Run, edition and historical revisions. The article from El País newspaper, it also highlights that the very existence of the reggae myth is often portrayed as a metaphor for colonialism. Because the great misconception, it means his biological father was a white British officer who impregnated a local girl. That's because, in fact, Norval Marley was also Jamaican by birth, who became a militarized engineer during World War II. They say Cedella Booker wasn't a model mother who didn't take enough care of the boy, but she and her son led a hard life, facing many challenges together. And before marrying an American, she had a complicated relationship with Bunny Wailer's father. As previously mentioned, in adulthood, Bob had various supports to survive, even having prestige as a musician. His widow Rita recalls days when she had to hide her nudity while her only piece of clothing dried. And we talk about someone's shared life and a certain reputation.
As a musician, just imagine.
To get an idea of the despair Bob Marley experienced during that time, he even migrated to the United States and worked in DuPont and Chrysler factories. However, the possibility of being drafted to fight in Vietnam made him return to the Caribbean. The Rastafari movement emerged in Jamaica. Hussein Özgün, by slaves and descendants of black people, aiming for the unity of the black race and a simple life. Rastafari is the supreme deity of the Rasta movement, responsible for guiding and instructing to build the paths of each god. Vote. Adopting the Rastafari religion as a way of life, Bob Marley embraced some specifics of this philosophy and religion, such as consuming fruits and vegetables and anything that comes from nature, in opposition to consuming dead animals, and the absence of alcohol consumption. Not to mention the iconic dreadlocks that became the singer's signature. In the song One Love from 1965, all the political and revolutionary nature that the doctrine carries, plus hope and positivity,
Soon for
factors mentioned in the song lyrics. Cannabis has always been linked to religious issues in Jamaica and Rastafari culture, not just a mere addiction, like the famous motto sex, drugs, and rock and roll. In the case of the herb for the reggae idol, it's Shisi, Gandhi. Its use was part of the connection with the supreme deity of the Black Race Union.
And in this sense,
The practice was associated with a moment of reflection, suitable for the creation and inspiration of every member of the trail. Safari. Through his songs and words, Marley spread a free and impartial thought about the plant around the world. An essential piece of information is that the sacramental use of the cannabis plant dates back thousands of years, because the religions of India and China incorporated it into their mystical beliefs for its medicinal properties. That's why there's an influence on Hindu and Pan-African cultures. Diving into the Rastafari's connection to marijuana. The Rastafari movement is based on the idea that the Ethiopian leader Haile Selassie, also known as Haile Selassie before ascending to the throne, claimed to descend from the biblical King Solomon's dynasty. Therefore, he was considered a messiah. So for the Rastafari culture, the effect of the plant is expanding consciousness. Besides improving the inner connection and bringing devotees of Yah closer to their God, the singer became known mainly for his lyrics, which spoke of issues such as black empowerment and the fight against racism. However, those who think that the reggae star's first profession was music. As I mentioned before, Bob also worked as a soldier. As soon as he left school and when he spent some time in the United States, he worked at an American multinational as an assistant. But an important fact, it's just that as a child, Marley was a boy who read palms. What they say is that Bobby Marley was so accurate when reading palms that he could earn many coins with this fortune-telling and prediction practice for people. And for a long time in his childhood, he made a bit of money by reading palms and pulses. His insight and prestige in his hometown, even after his songs became successful. He was still sought after to work with reading. Mataibati ekisibent, shaking hands. That's why some say that Marley, with that experience, would later read people's hearts through his music and compositions. In his performances, they can choose and inspire us with their simple and subtle way, spreading messages of peace and positivity.
There's no supportive community. It's harsh. I can't hide.
American journalist and collector Roger Stevens considered one of Bob Marley's best biographers. Explains the phenomenon based on a spiritual theory. Ritual, in his book, So Many Things to Say. Many of the interviewed who knew the reggae music star portray him as an archetypal figure of the Christian myth. A child born into poverty, son of a white man and a black woman, discriminated against by both whites and blacks, who becomes a deeply spiritual person. A natural leader, and also, why not, a profound one. Stevens compares his live shows to gospel meetings, associating the singer as a preacher, always with a cat. Female choir.
Everything will be okay.
In 1963, when he was 18, Marley joined Bunny Wailer and Peter Tosh to create the Wailing Wailers. Junior Braithwaite and the backup vocalists Beverly Kelso and Cherry Smith joined them. After releasing the single Simmer Down, a ska song depicting Kingston street gangs. Shortly after, they changed their name to the Wailers and a few years later became Bob Marley and the Wailers. Are you familiar with the project? Bob went to England in 1972 and signed a deal with the small label Island Records, owned by a lover of Jamaican music who lived in London named Chris Black. The businessman says that he gave her £4,000 to record the album. He stated he never thought he would achieve anything with that first record release. However, 4 months later, the group set the music market on fire with Ketchup. Fire, which would become the first album of Bob Marley and the Wailers in Europe and the big bang of the beautiful reggae line. The first 20,000 copies of the original vinyl from 1973 were designed by the artists Rod Dyer and Bobby Winder, with a visual identity associated with the Zippo lighter brand. The vinyl cover was made from the top part of a lighter that, when opened, allowed space for the record to be taken out of the sleeve. However, the technology of the time did not allow for mass production, and the design proposal would increase. VC cut the price from the album Thus, the official cover for the other copies ended up being a portrait of Bobby Marley. In 1976, Marley miraculously survived and a brutal assassination attempt against him and his bot.
On December 3rd, 1976, would-be killers broke into Bob Marley's house and spilled paint into the singer's life and his wife.
Presumably because of his pacifist political stance. In a troubled Jamaica, one of the 86 bullets grazed his chest and embedded in his... The attack happens.
It happened 2 days before the
Jamaica,
smash.
a free concert organized by Jamaican Prime Minister Michael Manley. And during the attack, Marley was with his wife Rita and businessman Don Taylor. The presentation aims to ease the tension between two rival political groups. And so it is suspected that the attack had political motives, as many felt that the museum could be performing an act in support of the Prime Minister. Jamaican. 2 days after the shooting, with open wounds, Bob showed up with his band at the festival, where he tried again to appeal for peace.
It wasn't a hit. You felt nothing.
The concert went down in history and was forced into exile, first in Nassau, Bahamas, and then in London, where he stayed for an entire year. Was enough to change his career and his life, because it was there that the music legend composed and recorded 2 essential albums. In its enormous exuberance, 1877, which tells the story of his exile, and Fall, aged 78, written about love and Rastafarian culture and its connection with Mary. Catch a Fire became Marley's most successful album of original songs in the United Kingdom, reaching number 4. Some critics even suggested at the time that Marley had in some way switched his supposedly firm political convictions for the production of an emotionally softer album. To become more popular, besides his music, Bob Marley left heirs who keep the Jamaicans' work alive. In our shows, Zig, Stephen, Kainenning, Damian, and Julian Marley often sing many of their father's hits. It was 77 and the Jamaican artist was playing soccer in London. That is, he said and in that match, he hurt his right big toe and the toenail fell off, seemingly as a result of the untreated wound. However, 3 years later, Marley found out he had actually developed a kind of skin cancer identified as a malignant melanoma on him. As a medical recommendation, Bob would have to amputate his toe. But due to his Rastafari beliefs, he refused to undergo surgery, and as a result, the disease spread to other parts of his body, like the brain, the lung, and the stomach. At the age of 36 on May 11th, 1981, Bob Marley passed away in the city of Miami, in the state of Florida, United States. He was buried in his hometown in Jamaica, and some say his body was placed in a mausoleum next to a Gibson Les Paul guitar. And a Bible, however, the exact location of his grave remains a secret.